Thus, heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. Genesis chapter 2, verse 2 and 3.
Since the creation of the world, God established a day through which humanity may receive rest, blessings, and holiness. And the seventh day holds such an importance in the eyes of God that the observance of this day became one of God's 10 commandments.
Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8.
Receiving God's promise of blessing and spiritual rest depends on us remembering to keep holy the Sabbath day. In order to do this, we must first understand what day of the week is the seventh day. First, let us take a look at an everyday tool, the calendar, in order to understand which day is the seventh day of the week. We can clearly see, as illustrated, the 7-day week cycle begins with Sunday, making it the first day of the week, and proving Saturday as the seventh day of the week, the Sabbath day. Next, let's look through one of the pillars of our education, the dictionary, and understand the definition of Sunday.
Sunday, the first day of the week.
What about Saturday?
Saturday, the seventh day of the week.
The dictionary confirms what was seen earlier through the calendar. In order to avoid any controversy regarding the day of worship, we need to look into the ultimate authority in the Christian faith, the Holy Bible. By examining the day on which all Christian denominations celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ, Easter Sunday, we can clearly find out the day of the biblical Sabbath. First, let's take a look at the scene of the resurrection in the New American Standard Bible.
Now, after he had risen early on the first day of the week, Mark chapter 16, verse 9.
What about the New Living Translation?
It was early on Sunday morning when Jesus rose from the dead. Mark chapter 16, verse 9.
Using a parallel Bible containing the New Living Translation and the New American Standard Bible, we can clearly see that Sunday is the first day of the week. This concludes that Saturday is the seventh day of the week, the biblical Sabbath. Today, many Christians neglect the Sabbath day, claiming it is not a Christian observance, but let us see if this was a practice in the life of Jesus.
He went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went to the synagogue, as was his custom. Luke chapter 4, verse 16.
It is obvious that Jesus did not need blessings, rest, or holiness through the Sabbath day. The only reason why he observed the Sabbath day as his custom was to leave an example for those who later would call themselves Christians. Now this raises up a question as to why so many Christians today observe Sunday, the first day of the week, contrary to Christ's example.
The Sabbath, the most glorious day in the law, has been changed into the Lord's day. This has not been done by the command of Christ, but by the authority of the church.
But these claims do not match the biblical examples in regards to the day of worship shown by the early Christians, such as Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul kept the Sabbath day in accordance to the example of Christ.
Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. As his custom was, Paul went into the synagogue, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the Scriptures. Acts chapter 17, verse 2.
Then when was the doctrine of Sunday worship introduced into the church? In the year 605 BC, the prophet Daniel foresaw the change and warned us with great concern.
I, Daniel, was troubled in spirit, and the visions that passed through my mind disturbed me. He will speak against the Most High and oppress his saints and try to change the set times and the laws. The saints will be handed over to him for a time, times, and half a time. Daniel chapter 7, verse 15 through 25.
Then, in history, who spoke against God by changing God's set times and laws, thus fulfilling the prophecy of Daniel? Christianity has been growing steadily since its foundation 3 centuries earlier. The church was well organized by a large network of bishops and priests. For some Romans, Christianity's message of a glorious afterlife and the expiation of sin had great appeal.
The problem for the Christians was that they denied the existence of all other divinities. Diocletian, convinced that his gods had helped him stabilize the empire, had to ensure that as many of the inhabitants of the empire as possible worshipped his gods. There is a contract. We worship you, you help us. The Christians break that contract.
But many regarded the intolerant zeal of the Christians and their belief in one God as deeply offensive. Diocletian, encouraged by his ruthless deputy Galerius, ordered Christians to be punished. On February 24th in the year 303 AD, an edict of persecution was announced. Churches were demolished, Bibles burned, suspected Christians rounded up.
As someone who witnessed martyrdoms will have seen the ferocity of Christian commitment to their faith, and may very well have been impressed by it, and have wondered, why are these people behaving like this? Behaving in a very un-Roman fashion, but also behaving in a very courageous fashion.
Those who refused to give up their faith were imprisoned, tortured, and even executed. While remaining chief priest of pagan beliefs, Constantine then took on a momentous new role. He became the head of the Christian Church.
Constantine rapidly discovers that he is going to have a very, very close relationship with the Christian hierarchy. He is expected to have a view on Christian discipline and in due course on Christian doctrine. He is the arbiter for the Christian Church, as well as the controller of the secular Roman world. He has acquired a massive new religious responsibility which no previous Roman emperor has ever had.
But Constantine did not wish to be waylaid by theological disputes. He was determined to unite the Roman world.
Roman politics, late Roman politics, you either prosper or die. Price of failure is always death. If you decide to play the game, you're playing for keeps.
Christianity fulfilled the emperor's expectations. It was a potent force for unification.
Constantine was superb at deploying Christianity. It gave him a political ideology which helped unify the empire. On the back of the church, on the back of ecclesiastical institutions, Constantine developed an ideology which put him next to God, which made him the friend of Christ. And Christianity was Constantine's great discovery as a way of presenting his power to the Roman Empire.
Like many military men, Constantine associated the Christian god with the pagan sun god. He made Sunday, the day of the sun, a public holiday, but at court he behaved with Christian piety. This undeniable evidence clearly proves that the modern-day Christians worship the day of the sun, Sunday. But what about today's religious leaders, like pastors and priests? Do they not know that Sunday worship originates from paganism and not from Christ? let us take a look at a book written by James Cardinal Gibbons entitled The Faith of Our Fathers.
Not to mention other examples, is not every Christian obliged to sanctify Sunday and to abstain on that day from unnecessary servile work? Is not the observance of this law among the most prominent of our sacred duties? But you may read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, and you will not find a single line authorizing the sanctification of Sunday. The Scriptures enforce the religious observance of Saturday, a day which we never sanctify.
James was an American prelate of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Baltimore from 1877 until his death in 1886. He became the second American to work as a cardinal in the Vatican. But what about the Protestant churches? Why do they worship on Sunday like the Catholic Church? To understand this, we will take a look at a book written by Reverend John A. O'Brien entitled The Faith of Millions.
But since Saturday, not Sunday, is specified in the Bible, isn't it curious that non-Catholics who profess to take their religion directly from the Bible and not from the Church observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Yes, of course, it is inconsistent, but this change was made about 15 centuries before Protestantism was born, and by that time the custom was universally observed. They have continued the custom even though it rests upon the authority of the Catholic Church, and not upon an explicit text in the Bible. That observance remains as a reminder of the Mother Church from which the non-Catholic sects broke away, like a boy running away from home but still carrying in his pocket a picture of his mother or a lock of her hair.
John O'Brien was a Roman Catholic priest who worked in the Archdiocese of Dublin until 2008.
The heretics of this age are trying to overthrow the authority of the Church. They claim to make the sacred scriptures the foundation of their faith. But it is the Church, after all, that has authority over the scriptures. It is the Church that points us to the scriptures and declares them to be divine, and explains them faithfully when they are difficult to understand.
To reinforce this frightening evidence, now let us see the responses of Reverend Stephen A. Keenan in an interview to explain their justification for worshiping on Sunday.
Have you any other way of proving that the Church has power to institute festivals of precept? Had she not such power, she could not have done that in which all modern religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday, the first day of the week, for the observance of Saturday, the seventh day, a change for which there is no scriptural authority.
Obviously, these so-called religious leaders know that they are doing wrong, but do they care? How many souls are being led astray by these spiritually blind guides? It is scary, and at the same time sad to see how many people have been deceived by these blind guides. Jesus Christ clearly described them as hypocrites.
You have let go of the commands of God and are holding on to the traditions of men. And he said to them, you have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions. Mark chapter 7, verse 8 through 9.
Today many people believe in God with their lips, and they also claim to follow the teachings of the Bible. But actually they follow falsehood, turning their faces from the righteous teachings of the Bible, not even knowing what day is the Sabbath day. If we really believe in God and eagerly look forward to the kingdom of heaven, there is an important command for us. We ought to obey God's word fully by keeping the Sabbath day holy. The Sabbath is a day of blessing and fellowship. If there were no blessings of God, how miserable would our life be? God prepared blessings on the Sabbath day to change misery into joy, pain into comfort, unhappiness into happiness.
If you love me, you will obey what I command. John chapter 14, verse 15.
Those who love God also love his commands.